our next and final talk of the session by Francisco from Madrid. He will be talking about his analysis on the practice of overprofiling on the internet.
So thank you. Today I will be presenting our work, overprofiling analysis of major online advertising players. And first of all, I wanted to start with the motivation of this work. As you know, online systems, mainly social media ones, rely on advertisement as their business model. This means that they will track the users inside and outside of their platforms in order to categorize them or profile them in different categories, such as interests. So they will generate a list of interests. And in some cases, this list of interests may be composed of hundreds or even thousands of interests for a single user. So the issue with this is that although interests are not personal data by themselves, if you combine some of them, you can uniquely identify a person. In a previous study, with only 22 random interests, you could uniquely identify a person with 90% of confidence on Facebook. But if you were to take the most niche categories, the more strange ones, the ones that are more specific, with only 4 categories is enough to uniquely identify a person. Then this can be used to target specific ads towards a specific person. So here's the issue. So before jumping into our study, I wanted to do, set up the research question. First, we wanted to know if these interests that are assigned to people are really accurate, or are these platforms overprofiling us with interests that are not relevant, and if there is a way of reducing this overprofiling. And then if there are some methods, like using the topics API approach, using the browsing history method to infer interest is better or worse performing against the platform's approaches. And can online advertising platforms distinguish between the relevant and irrelevant interests that are assigned to our profiles? So before going into the tool we have developed, we first will review the transparency tools, which first there is the ad preference managers. These are just the interest list of a user. All platform has the same idea of showing which interest, if you want to be targeted by those interests in particular or not. Then this is the ad transparency tools, which shows the reasons why an ad has been targeted. So it can be things like language, gender, location, but the thing we are most interested into is which interest has been used to target a particular ad. So in order to do this study, what we did was to create a browser extension which will collect data from users, from the interest list, and also from the ads and the reason why ads has been shown. So we focus on 4 different platforms, which are Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And aside from the interests that are assigned by this platform, we also infer the interest that has been the interest using the topics API classifier. So we take the browsing history of the user and compile a list of interests based on that. And this browser extension will have a user interface in which the user can evaluate the interest between 1 and 5 stars, being 1 star an interest which is not relevant at all, and 5 stars being an interest which is very relevant. So we did an study using Prolific. So we gathered 154 valid submissions, and we asked them several things. The most relevant to this study is to browse social media for a few minutes in order to gather some ads, and then to evaluate at least 200 interests. So going into the results, we first wanted to see how many interests are assigned to each person. So as you see, both Facebook and Twitter assigns too many interests to a user. Facebook has a median of 300 interests per user, and Twitter around 250. But there are some users that even reach the thousands of interests. On the other side, we have Google and LinkedIn, which assigns a figure amount of interest. And here, in the case of Google, we use the new My Ad Center system. So the previous one, it seems that they assign much more interest, but the newest version assigns fewer. So then we want to see the profiling accuracy. And here's the same information in two different shapes. But if you focus on the right side column of the table, you will see the interest that has been evaluated with 4 or 5 stars, which we think is the most relevant interest. And if you see there that in any of the 4 platforms, we reach the 50% of interest, which are very relevant. And the most surprising thing here is that the browsing history approach, which only uses one type of data, performs much better, which was really surprising to us. And we wanted to dive more into this. So what we did was to use the interests that were used to target ads, and we gathered the evaluation of these interests, and we compared the distribution. So in the left side, you will see on red, the distribution of the interest using the interest that has been used to target ads against the previous one, which are all assigned interest. And you can see here that there is an important increase of the quality of the interest in this case. So this is clear that the platforms can make a distinction between the more relevant and the less relevant interests among the ones that they assign. But as I said earlier, the most dangerous interest for the privacy will be the ones that are most unique, the ones that are assigned to fewer people. So what we did was to obtain how many people has a certain interest for all interests of our data set. And we here plot the density distribution. They have different shapes. For instance, LinkedIn only assign very common interests, very narrow, and both Facebook and Twitter has a more wide range. So if we plot this against the evaluation of the users, we wanted to see how the audience size changes with evaluation. So if you focus on Facebook, here on the y-axis is the audience size, but it's in a logarithmic scale. And as you can see, once we increase the user evaluations, the audience size will increase. What does this tell us is that the most niche categories, the most specific ones, are the hardest to assign. So, it's very difficult to assign very specific interests. And even with all the data this platform gathers, it's not enough to properly assign those interests, whereas the most common attributes are easier to assign. So here, what we wanted to see later is, okay, are those interests which are more privacy invasive, and those they are also harder to assign, are they really used by advertisers? And the quick answer is no. So we first have the density distribution of the interest that has been assigned by the platforms, which are in red. And then on the blue shape, there is the distribution of the interest that has been selected by the advertisers. And you can see there is an important shift to the right, which means that the advertisers are selecting more general categories to target ads, and they almost not using interest that has only an audience size of less than 1 million people worldwide. So our proposal is to remove interests which has less than 1 million people worldwide, and also to reduce the number of interests, because as we saw later, we said before, the platforms already know which interest is more likely to be relevant to the user, and also the most niche categories are the ones that are harder to assign. So we think that the user privacy could be improved, eliminating those niche categories, and also if we reduce the number of interests. So thank you.
There's another implication of what you've just done, which is the niche interests can be used to target particular users and used for disinformation. So your point about eliminating interests that have small groups is actually a valuable thing for the disinformation community to think about.
You can think of the niche categories to be very sensitive to people, because you can target those very specific groups that, it's something very relevant to consider, that also removing those niche categories, you could help avoiding any kind of attack towards any minority or something like that. Yeah.
Can you clarify whether the migration to topics API, where it will be more coarse-grained interest categories, does that impact this as well, or this is all first party that is happening on Facebook's website? It has nothing to do with what is happening through the Chrome audio, topics API.
So these platforms can choose whether they want to keep their model of creating the interest, because they can do it on their platform because they are big enough to do so. But if they want to adopt the topics API, they could, but I don't think they will.
Maybe let me rephrase. So Facebook will be able to do whatever on Facebook.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about Facebook Pixel, if there is no, let's for a second assume all the other things are not there, but let's say third-party cookies are not there and they're only using topics API, then from outside of Facebook, Facebook can only get those like broad categories.
Yeah, it could be the case, yeah.
Okay, let's thank our speaker again, and that this concludes the session. Thank you.